Hello, Ark fan. Welcome back to the channel. Noah here. Today, up for review, we have the Masters of the Universe Vintage Collection Faker and Zodac. Funny story about the Faker. I actually picked him up a while back and tried to do a review and kept messing up. When I was doing that review, I figured out the one that I had a defect with the head. It had glue on the face. So I went ahead and returned that to Walmart today and picked up this Faker and Zodac. He was not there last time, so that was really exciting to find the Zodac as well because I missed out on getting him for the Walmart Collector Con. Let's go ahead and bring in Zodac for a closer look. Sorry, I have them a little bit too far away. Here's the front of the packaging. We have the Masterverse logo up top. The sides are just simple with exploding rocks. It's the same on every vintage collection figure. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the back. Here's a look at that artwork. Zodac attacks the heroic warriors using all the evil power at his command. So this is a throwback to the original concept that he was a villain. Really cool looking. Battle with laser pistol, armed with cosmic energy shield. Zodac Cosmic Enforcer. Colors and decorations may vary. In 1982, Masters of the Universe took the world by storm with action figures that captured the imaginations of people from here to Eternia. Today, the Masterverse celebrates the original designs as modern 7-inch scale action figures with the vintage collection. Mattel changed their slogan from empowering the next generation through play to empowering generations through play. So that's pretty cool. Alright, let's go ahead and look at the Faker packaging. The top just has the Masterverse logo. The sides are exactly the same. There is a call out that says each figure has 30 points of articulation and is designed for ages 6+. Mattel logo is here on the side. Moving to the back. Here we have the artwork. Faker is no He-Man. He's the evil blue robotic warrior of Skeletor. Pretty cool looking. Moving down. Arm for battle. Reveal robotic recorder. Faker, evil robot of Skeletor. The bio is exactly the same on all the vintage collection figures, so I'm not going to read that. And the Mattel logo and slogan is the same. I'm going to go ahead and remove these out of package. It is worth noting that getting the figures out of the package, the only things encapsulated in the plastic is the figure and one of their accessories. So Mattel is cutting back on the amount of plastic usage in these boxes. The rest of them is in a separate cardboard compartment in the side of a paper bag. I'll go ahead and say sorry if there's any audio disturbances. I am filming this outside in the city, so I'm sure you guys heard the neighbors yelling earlier, and you might hear birds or cars in the background, so if that's a problem, I apologize. Just let me know in the comments, and I will change my location for my next review. Due to obnoxious and nosy neighbors, as well as noisy neighbors, the location will be changing. As you can see, I've moved back to my usual location, and here's Vintage Collection Faker and Zodac outside of the packaging. As you can see, I went ahead and armed up Faker with all of his weapons and accessories, except for his swappable hands. I did swap this hand because this was an open hand. And as you can see, I have Faker wielding the sword left-handed and the shield on the right side. That is because I think that Faker should be the opposite of He-Man, so he has the opposite hand is what he uses instead of the right hand. He used the left hand. So that's why I decided to do that. The right side does have a vertical hinge, so I'll just show that off real quick on this He-Man because the exact same body. So as you can see, it can just hinge a little bit up and down. It's not a very great range of motion at all, so it's nothing too special, so I don't really consider it anything that you need to worry about not seeing in this video. Anyhow, I'm going to go ahead and do Faker first. So I'm going to move Zodac off to the side, bringing Faker in for a closer look. Here is his head sculpt. It's the same as the Vintage Collection He-Man that has already been released, as well as the 40th anniversary He-Man Skeletor 2-pack, which is technically the first Vintage Collection He-Man and Skeletor. Overall, the head looks really cool. Armor looks great. They have all the vintage colors. There is some embellishments on the armor, like this gun metal that's painted on all the jeweled looking parts of the armor. So that's pretty cool. As you can see, they went ahead and gave him the shield that's vintage inspired and this battle axe. Of course, Faker did not come with a battle axe or a shield in the vintage figure. It was just him and his sword. Overall, really, really cool looking. Articulation, arms can go out to the side all the way. You can swivel at the bicep / tricep. Arms go forwards and backwards. Bend at the elbow. Double jointed, as you can see right there. Double jointed elbow. You can kind of see the vertical hinge working in there. Just like that. On this side, wow, the armor keeps popping. That is one thing that's disappointing about this Faker is the armor seems to be a little bit too small for the figure. Basically just in the strap area. Other arms just the same, except for, of course, you have a horizontal hinge on this side. Wrist bracers getting in the way, but wow, that's really tight. It's not bending, but it's a horizontal hinge on this side instead of a vertical hinge. Straightening Faker back up. Head can look up a little bit, down a good amount, side to side. This Faker does not have glue on his face like my previous Faker did. So that's pretty nice. I'm going to go ahead and remove this axe. Wow, see, the arms just popped very easily. And I'm just going to show you that these keep popping out of a socket or whatever. And that is very, very disappointing, in my opinion. You can't quite get this strap to fully buckle because of how buff his chest is. I don't know why they made these so extremely short. They normally seem to do more than you need, but this time they did way less than you need. If they had extended this strap about 1 or 2 more notches and had it come down in a different way so it didn't show from the front, that would have been better. But at least it stays on the figure. Even if it pops on the back, it's not necessarily something that's going to affect the front view. For like diorama pieces, that is something that you would have to worry about. But just on the shelf, standard pose, something like that, you don't really have to worry, except for the fact that it does not sit 100% centered on the chest. So a lot of times you have one side of this chest piece showing more than the other side. But you can kind of force it back into place. Here's a look at the sword. All the weapons are cast in this copper orange color. Pretty cool. Unlike the vintage, but I still like that they did it. Of course, you have the purple loincloth. This one has a black wash, and then the gunmetal belt, just like the vintage. The gunmetal wrist bracers. As you can see, there's black straps, whereas the vintage technically didn't have straps at all. Just looked like this was glued to their arm. Moving down, the boots are in the same purplish color with the black wash. They have the drop joints. So let me show you that real quick. Give me just 1 second. Flashlight on. So as you can see, there's the drop joint, if this will focus. So you can just push that up, close that gap, pull it down, and open the gap again. Sorry if my thumb's getting in the way. I'm trying to hold up this piece of the loincloth. It's not a big drop, but it is a drop. So that's pretty cool. You can swivel at the thigh cut. Double joint at the knee. Wow, I'm not holding on to this figure very well. Anyway, double joint at the knee all the way up to the back. You can kick the foot up. Let's turn off this flashlight. Moving down, the other side is the same. You have the swivel, the drop joint, up and down, double joint at the knee, bend all the way up to the back, kick yourself if you want to. Not kick yourself, the figure can kick himself. Swivel at the boot. Swivel at the other boot, hinge at the ankles, very, very good hinges. The Zodac has very tight ankle joints, I figured out when I was trying to get him to stand. Rocker's really nice on this. Nothing loose or anything, but it's very, very nice and fluid motion there. We have the swivel at the diaphragm. We have the ab crunch forward, ab crunch back, swivel at the waist. No action feature. That would have been cool if they just added that action feature, since these figures technically can't be taken apart in the same way that the Origins can anyway. So it wouldn't have been much of a problem to just do a action feature at the waist itself, since you have the diaphragm cut up here. Since this armor keeps popping off, I'm going to go ahead and show you what that looks like without the armor on, so you can just pop off the head. Very, very tight connection there. This does have a smaller peg than the Origins. I figured that out with my previous faker that had the defect with the head when I swapped heads in my other review. I was just going to keep him even though he's defective, but once I swapped the heads, his head became really, really loose. So I decided to go ahead and return him since he already had a defect anyway. Just pull the armor off like that, pop the head back on. But before we do that, you can see they have the extra cut forward to where that's how the head can go extra far forward and stuff like that. Wow, that's tight. There we go. Nice click. And I guess I should have shown that it does more of a forward hunch and then back. But overall, pretty cool looking. Here you have a better look at this dial. A lot of people are saying that it's die cast. I'm really not sure about that. It doesn't really sound metal when I thump it. Normally I can tell if something's metal just by clicking my fingernail against it. It does not really sound metal to me. It kind of sounds like the plastic. I'm not sure, but it looks cool. Has a lot of nice details, just like the Vintage. Instead of being a sticker, though, they just modified the Vintage Collection chest and just cut it out to where you can place that on the inside. That's pretty cool. It is not removable. A lot of people said it looks like it should be removable. I don't think it looks like it should be removable. I think it's just cut that way to where you can glue it in there or whatever. So the factory could have glued it in there. Overall, he looks really cool. Very vintage accurate with his overall styling. I do not have the vintage figure to show off, but I do have the Origins figure. I'll bring that in just a second. First things first, we're going to go ahead and bring in the He-Man from the Vintage Collection. He does have a McFarlane Toys Black Adam lightning effect on the sword because it looks cool in my opinion. So once I get him posed up properly, I'm going to go ahead and bring him in. Here you can see them side by side. Of course, Faker's in a more dynamic pose right now, or a powerful battle position as Origins calls it. Like I said, same head, same chest sculpt, except for the cut. You can see that better from the side, how buff they are. Shield's the same, just painted differently. Sword's exactly the same, just painted differently. The axe is exactly the same if you look at this one and compare it to the other one right here. You can tell they're exactly the same. This same axe is also used in New Eternia a few times. So that's pretty cool looking. Overall, really, really nice job on the Faker. As you can see, there's like a dark blue wash over the lighter blue body. Well, at least I think you can see that. I'm not sure if you can see that on camera, but it gives a nice, realistic look to it. Just like the He-Man has more of a tan overspray over the more flesh-toned body. He-Man's is a little bit more noticeable. It almost looks like he's got a spray tan. A little bit of Donald Trump going on right there. Anyway, going to go ahead and move this He-Man off to the side. Repose this Faker to where he can actually stand. And bring in the Origins Faker. The Origins Faker does not have his... Oops. The Origins Faker does not have his Origins armor that came with him because I used that for a Evil Horde Keldor custom. The Keldor custom's not finished yet. I will be doing a custom video on the channel soon. He has a Tuvar or Badger armor, I can't remember which one, instead of the regular Faker armor, as you can see right here. But here's how they look side by side. Skin tones are very, very different. So no part swaps are necessary. I'm not going to do that anyway because I tried that before and that's what messed up the head. Is either that or swapping this head onto the Cartoon Collection Skeletor body. I'm not going to do the Skeletor comparison in this video just because the skin tones are off, so there's not really any point in doing that. But here's how they look side by side. As you can see, this is very vintage inspired, and this kind of takes inspiration from this overall design. So here's how they look side by side. I'll go ahead and remove this armor so you can see the chest plate on this faker. As you can see, it's just printed on. Details are basically the same though. If you bring them in closer and look, you can find all the same details on there. But this one looks a lot better because it's sculpted out on the new one. I can go ahead and try this Vintage Collection armor on this faker real quick. See if we can get that camera to focus real quick. There we go. As you can see, I put the armor on this Origins faker. It looks pretty good overall. It's not like loose on the body or anything, at least not really. As you can see, the straps buckle really nicely. It buckles on the second notch closer to the top of the armor rather than the bottom notch like the figure that it came with. Overall looks pretty decent. The only thing is this armor kind of makes this faker look a little bit hunchbacked just because of how high it comes up. But overall looks pretty decent, matches the sword. It is worth mentioning that this cut right here is at an angle, so when you put a sword in there, it is a little bit weird looking. It's just angles in a strange way. So as you can see, the sword's like really angled weird. I don't know why my camera's not focusing. Here we go. So I don't necessarily like that. They should have just done a regular cut in my opinion, but it looks okay. We're going to go ahead and move on to the next comparison with the Masterverse Faker. Moving on, leaving the armor off of the Masterverse Faker for our next comparison, we have the Cartoon Collection Faker, which is basically the same as the Cartoon Collection He-Man with a few minor changes, like the armor is slightly different, the sword is cast in a different color plastic, the boots are more cartoon accurate, and of course the head has more of an angry face, and the eyes are painted in a glowing look with some white paint. I have a short for this figure up on my channel already called He-Man ? That's where I show off the two figures I have, the He-Man and the Faker. I don't think I need to do part swaps because these definitely do not match in color, and this armor would not fit the Masterverse, and I don't see any point in putting the Vintage Collection armor on this cartoon figure anyway. So moving on. I just wanted to quickly show this He-Skeletor alongside the Faker because he's the only other blue-skinned He-Man style character in the line or in the universe of He-Man that I know of, so that's how they look side by side. Of course, no part swaps will happen here either. For one last Faker comparison, I brought in the Turtles of Grayskull's version of Faker, Slacker. Slacker is, of course, a combination of Faker and Slash, and yes, it is pronounced Slacker, not Slaker, because you take the sound of the first character, Slash, and the sound of the last character, Faker, and combine them, Slacker. There's a lot of confusion about that, but as you can see, there's also a dial on this one. It's also painted, but it has pizzas instead of robotics. Here's how they look side by side. No part swaps are necessary here either. I wanted to go ahead and bring in a Masterverse Skeletor, in this case the New Adventure Skeletor, just for skin tone comparison. In my current collection, this Skeletor has the closest skin tone to the Faker, but they are very different. So I'm not going to do any part swaps with that either, but I just want to show those side by side. Here I've put the New Eternia Cyclone head on the Faker body just to show off how that looks. The blue tones are a little bit different. The Cyclone face matches the wash on the Faker more than the actual skin tone, so it actually works out pretty decent. If you want to make customs or anything like that, here's a way to start that. Of course, you could get some different gold wrist bracelets and stuff like that, and just arm this guy up and so you have a new custom character if you would like to. This head fits on the new body, but the Faker head does not fit on the Cyclone body. The ball joints are slightly different in size, and I do not want to loosen this head, so I just have it sitting on top. But here's how that looks. One last comparison with the Faker, then moving on to Zodac. Here I have the Faker alongside a Masters of the Universe Classics figure, in this case the Skeletor that came with the Molar set. You can tell that by the tooth missing. I just wanted to show those side by side just for a quick Classics comparison. Before we move on to Zodac, I'm going to go ahead and show off the 2 extra hands that came with Faker. You have a open left hand, horizontally hinged, and a punching right fist, also horizontally hinged. Here we have the new Masters of the Universe Vintage Collection Zodac figure. He is definitely an upgrade when you compare him to the Masterverse New Eternia Zodac. I do have him in my collection, but now he is going to go in storage just because he's one of my favorite characters, so I don't want to get rid of him, but I don't necessarily like the new design for the New Eternia figure. But this is an awesome Zodac. He will stay on my shelf with all my New Eternia and Vintage Collection figures. Currently, the only things that I'm collecting for Masterverse are New Eternia, Vintage Collection, and then some of the Dolph Lundgren movie figures. And I occasionally pick up some Revelation figures based on personal preferences. Like I got Stinkor, I'm going to pick up Spikor. I had Man-at-Arms, but I got rid of him. I had 3 King Grayskulls. I got rid of all 3 of them. I had Evil Lyn, I had Tila. Got rid of them. I had 2 Mossman figures from the Revelation line. I got rid of them as well. I have the Battle Cat, but hopefully they'll do a New Eternia Battle Cat, just like they did the New Eternia Panther, because I definitely like the new design on the Panther more than I like the Revelation design for the Battle Cat. Anyway, like I said, I'm just going to be collecting these Vintage Collection figures mainly, and the New Eternia. So, bring this guy in closer. You can see his new head sculpt. It looks really, really good. Very, very vintage accurate, and also kind of similar to the Filmation animation. Speaking of which, I hope they do him in the Vintage Collection. He only showed up in like 1 episode, maybe 2 in the early cartoons, but he looked really, really awesome. He had the white gloves and the floating chair and everything. His eyes are actually jeweled. They're like glass eyes, as people want to call them. They're actually just like resin cast, but they look really, really cool, really, really cosmic looking. It's just simply some clear plastic jewels that are placed into the helmet. And of course, in the eye socket, they've painted some gunmetal, silverish blue color, just to where it kind of reflects through the clear lenses. So these are not cast in that plastic. They just reflect the paint behind them. Also, the armor has a translucent resin cast, pearl colored W or whatever that's supposed to be. It definitely looks like a W, which works out for Wundar. I don't know what it's supposed to be, but it's the kind of cosmic symbol that all the enforcers have on their chest. That looks really, really good. I did have a vintage Zodac to show you guys, but he broke a long time ago, and I tried to use him for different customs and never got around to it, so he's just broken up in different pieces across my collection, some parts painted, some parts not. So I will not be able to show him off today, but if you want to see the vintage figure, I'm sure you could find one in one of your local used toy shops or something like that. He's not super rare, but he is one of the harder to get figures. As you can see, this figure does utilize the furry shoulders and a furred chest, which of course is a new sculpt. It's not a reuse of any of the current figures. It is its brand new sculpt for this particular figure. Hopefully they'll use that for the Vintage Collection Stratos. Based on the images they've released so far, he does not have the furred chest, which is very, very strange, seeing as there was very few characters in the Vintage line that use the furred chest. Beastman, Mossman, Zodac, and Stratos were the only ones in the Vintage line. So hopefully they'll go ahead and fix that before they release the Stratos. There is a nice orangish colored wash on the flesh tones. Maybe you can see that when I turn on this light, if it'll focus. Wow. This review is not going fantastic, but I hope you guys stay tuned. Anyhow, you can't really see it on camera, but there's definitely a deep orange wash that's a little bit excessive in some areas on this figure. But now that I've turned them around, you can also see that there's extra painted details on this armor. And you, of course, have the place to remove the armor right down there, which we'll do here in a little bit. And there's the back of the helmet. We have the more vintage-inspired loincloth, whereas the new Eternia one is much more updated and, I guess, new Eternian in style. There is a little bit of a gray scuff on the knee, and the Faker figure also had a little bit of a gray scuff on his leg. I did not point that out, but that's a little bit disappointing, but these were the best looking figures in the store. I went through and checked every single one because I already saw comments on the Manchild's channel about the Vintage Collection Zodac that some of his fans received had glue on the helmet, just like my first Faker figure had glue on his face. So I made sure to check all the figures in stock at my local Walmart. And these were definitely the best looking ones in the bunch. Here we have a look at the gun. It is newer than the new Eternia one. It has a more realistic style with the trigger and all the different embellishments, which is a little bit closer to the vintage styling with a little bit of modern take to it, of course, with the trigger, and some of the detailing on the handle is a little bit different. I'm looking at the Origins gun right now to tell you guys all that. The Origins gun is basically an exact replica of the vintage gun because, of course, I had the Zodac before and he was complete. You can see he's got the Skeletor arms down here and the Skeletor feet. And, of course, this one is technically evil, whereas the new Eternian one was heroic and the Origins Zodac was heroic. He just kind of switches around. A lot of people want to consider him neutral, and that's what I like to consider him, but I normally have him fighting on the good side rather than the evil side. So, of course, in my display, he will be on the heroic side. Of course, I have an evil shelf and a heroic shelf in my collection. I mean, who doesn't, right? Go ahead and go over the articulation real quick. Arms go out to the side, forwards, backwards, swivel at the bicep/tricep. Well, the bottom joint is hinging on this elbow. Let's try to get the top one too. Here we go. Double jointed, of course. This fin on the arm does hit the bicep if you use all of the top joint and a little bit of the bottom joint. If you leave the top locked and bend the other part, you can get a little bit more of a bend, depending on what type of pose you want. Here we have a hinge at the wrist and a swivel at the wrist. As you can see, there's a trigger finger here, just like the new Eternia figure used, and a lot of the Skeletor figures also use that, I guess, as one of those, yeah, do what I want you to do kind of hands. But with the Zodac, it works out for his gun. He does not have a place to store his gun except for in his hand. That's the thing that I liked about the new Eternia figure, is he had a place to store his gun. I can try to see if this new gun will fit in the new Eternia holster in just a little bit. If so, I'm probably going to put the holster on this figure so I can hold the gun if I want to. But overall, really, really cool looking, very vintage accurate. This armor has a really nice shine to it because it is a very hard plastic, unlike a lot of the armors in the line. We're going to go ahead and pop that off real quick and see how we get that off, and then we'll finish the articulation after that. So it looks like you just have to stretch these bands around the shoulders. Wow, that is very tight. They should have had an extra buckle since the armor is such a rigid plastic. It is a little bit more rubberized in the straps, but still, that's not necessarily a great design in my opinion. Removing the armor, we have this brand new sculpt with these unreal traps. They're very, very large. I'm assuming they did that because they're probably going to use the same chest for the Beast Man, and they wanted it to look more monstrous. But it definitely looks weird on this Zodac. Kind of makes him look like he has no neck and just has huge traps. But it works out all right. Chest is really, really cool. Has a lot of nice fur detail and musculature. The abs are also furry. It'd be really cool if they did like some Masterverse figures for the crossovers in the line. For like Origins, how they've been doing Thundercats and Ninja Turtles. I wish they would do crossovers for the Masterverse figures too. Speaking of Masterverse, according to news that's been released from the London Toy Fair, Masterverse of 2026 will be mainly focusing on the figures based off the movie with Nicholas Galitzine and Jared Leto. That is pretty cool. And Origins will solely be focusing on 2000X, and the cartoon collection will, of course, continue. So I'm excited for new 2000X figures in the Origins styling. I don't know if they'll just do more of a updated version of the original 2000X figures, so they'll have the same proportions of the original ones with modern articulation, or if they'll keep the Origins style like they've been doing for their other ones so far in the Origins line. I'd kind of like to see both, personally. Of course, Mondo is also releasing their 2000X 6-inch scale line, which will kind of fit in with these Masterverse figures, even though the Masterverse figures are more of like a 8-inch figure. 6, 7, 8-inch figures, they kind of all range together. So he looks pretty cool. Legs, of course, have the drop joints, as you can see there. Swivel at the thigh cut. Double joint at the knee. Hinge at the ankle. And swivel at the boot. There is a rocker on these boots as well. And these boots have been reused from the previous two Vintage Collection Skeletors, the exclusive and the retail release. I had an opportunity to get the Skeletor at a comic convention, but I had used my entire budget before I got to the table that was selling him, so I was not able to purchase him, so he will not be in this video. But as soon as I do find a way to get him, I will be reviewing him as well. I'm going to go ahead and put this armor back on this Zodac. After I did the head articulation, he can look up, none. He can look down, some. He can spin side to side with his head and look all around. But, like I said, he can't go back any because the helmet hits the traps. So that's a little bit disappointing. But it does not take away from the figure, in my opinion, because he's just so awesome. Putting Zodac's armor back on, I'm going to go ahead and show the accessories that he comes with. I'd love to see you guys' comments in the comment section below. I really enjoy reading the comments as long as they are friendly comments and nothing to be rude to me or my channel. But I really enjoy the interaction side of this YouTube thing, so if you guys ever want to comment down below, give me some thoughts, ideas, advice, anything like that, what you would like to see next on my channel, I will try to make it happen. I have been doing some editing of my YouTube channel itself, but I still do not have any video editors yet. It's already hard enough to find enough money to spend on all these figures. So I have not downloaded any app to edit my videos yet because of that. It's just a little bit too much money in my opinion. But first accessory we have is this yellow blast effect, which can plug into two different places. I'll show you that in just a second. First things first, it plugs into the gun. So that's pretty cool looking. I'll definitely be displaying my Zodac with this blast effect in his gun. Secondly, you can go ahead and remove this hand because I'm going to swap it out real quick. Because you have this spellcasting hand, which also has a hole in the hand. That is the second place, of course, where you can plug that blast effect. So right now you just have him with his hand out and a hole in his hand. Of course, you would not use this hand if he is not casting a spell or anything. If you want to have a regular hand, you also have this clawing hand, which is kind of vintage accurate because, of course, the vintage figure had a clawing left hand and a gripping right hand. So here's how that looks. I'm not going to swap it out. But it is really, really cool looking. And, of course, these all have the Masterverse new style pegs rather than the Origin style pegs that have been used previously in the Masterverse line. So I'm going to go ahead and swap this blast effect out and put it in the hand really quick before I move on to the next accessory. As you can see, he can blast the effect out of his hand as well, which actually does look cool. With this type of effect, I'd rather it be on the finger, though. So if he had like a gesturing finger, I could put it on the pointer finger. But, I mean, it works. You can pretend he's Iron Man. He can fly around with this and stuff, or repulsor blast or whatever. Anyway, gonna put that back in the gun because the next accessory is what is designed to go in the hand. And that is this Doctor Strange style magic effect. It's called the Cosmic Shield. Of course, you have like that big eye of Agamotto or whatever is what it would be if it was Doctor Strange. But it looks pretty cool. Have that triangle, the Mystic Triangle or whatever. The Bermuda Triangle. I'm not sure exactly what it's supposed to be, but it looks pretty cool. Cast this translucent blue color. You have 3 little holes right there, which at first I thought you could plug something into, but you cannot. Of course, you have a peg on the back side. You can spin this like a top if you want to. Of course, that works. I doubt that's what it's designed for, but it does work. Anyway, you can go ahead and plug that into the hand, and let me show you how that looks. So here, he has his gesturing spell hand with the magic effect. I will be displaying mine with both the blast effect in the gun and this magic effect on this hand. Here's like a dynamic pose that you can do with it. You can use his evil power against He-Man that I'll bring in just in a second. If I can get him to stand, because like I said, these ankle joints are very, very tight, and I'm afraid that I'm going to break them if I'm not careful, and then I might have to settle for a less than perfect Zodac if these ankles break. Because, of course, I'd have to go back to Walmart and get a different one. Here we have He-Man coming in, looking a little bit angry right now, asking Zodac why he's trying to attack him. He hasn't done anything. Zodac says, because I'm evil now. He-Man says, oh. He blocks the effect with his shield. Zodac dies. Whatever. He-Man wins by the power of Grayskull. I have the power, He-Man says, and he walks off, and then Zodac shoots him in the back. He-Man's dead. Anyhow, here's how he looks. He looks pretty cool. Drop the gun. And remove this effect. It's very, very tight. It does not fit into the gun because the peg is slightly larger. So I'm not going to do that and stretch the gun to where it can't fit the blast effect. But the blast effect can fit in the hand because the hand's designed for the slightly larger peg. Trying to get this figure back posed, normally I'm going to bring in the other Zodac from the New Eternia line. So, give me just a second. Wow, did not mean to make all that noise. Here it is. Gonna go ahead and bring him in. Give me just 1 second. Here is the New Eternia Zodac with his cheesy design and ugly head sculpt. So here they are side by side. When this Zodac first came out and I saw him on Pixel Dan's channel, I thought, wow, this Zodac's awesome. I love the new loincloth. I love the holder for the gun. I love the shoulder pads. I wanted this Zodac so bad. When I got him on clearance in Laurinburg, North Carolina, a few hours away from my hometown, I realized that he's not that special. Once I got him out of package and realized that his joints were loose and he just had this weird neck design. Head looked a little bit too small for his body. Did not hold on to this 2000X style weapon very well at all. But, wow, he's going to fall down because of these loose joints. So, extra tight ankle joints, extra loose boot joints on this one. Here's how they look side by side. Skin tones are different. This is more of a pale tone. This is more of a tan tone. They do have the same exact forearms and bicep/tricep. We can go ahead and pull this shoulder pad off to the side. As you can see, this has a smooth shoulder, whereas this has a furry shoulder. Technically, this is vintage accurate, and this is not. But I do like the way this looks a little bit better. You can see that the chests are different sizes. Heads are totally different overall. And the boots are different. The tops of the boots are the same, but the bottoms of the boots are different. These are the Revelation/Revolution style feet. They've used these a lot in the new Eternia line, but these are definitely the better Demon, Skeletor feet or whatever. This side has the exact same arm, except for the shoulder, like I showed on the other side, including the trigger-fingered hand. Here's the back side of this figure. He has a totally different armor on the back. Of course, he holds the shoulder pads there. You can remove the shoulder pads and also hold this accessory like that if you want to. Same thing for the other side. I'm going to go ahead and try and swap the armors just to show you what that would look like. Of course, here I've tried to swap the armors between the two figures. As you can see, this armor will not fully clip, at least not with the leg attachment here. The little straps are just a little bit too short once more to go over this larger chest. And the armor does not sit down properly because of these enlarged traps. Had the traps been average size like this one, I think it would clip just fine because it would get closer down towards the waist, which is what we need for this leg piece to work properly. But overall, it looks pretty decent. As you can see, I've put the new Eternia gun in this Zodac's hand. Not a big fan of this gun. Don't have a problem with it, really, but I'm not a huge fan of it. Over here, I just put the new Eternia, not new Eternia, Vintage Collection armor on the new Eternia figure. As you can see, it's a little bit too big for this figure. There's a gap back here. But it does fit better than this armor fits on the Vintage Collection figure. Gun, of course, fits in the hand because it's the same hand sculpt. One more thing I'm going to do real quick. I'm going to go ahead and swap the heads just to show you what that would look like. The horrors continue as I've swapped the heads between the two figures. This head looks too big for the new Eternia body, and this head looks way too small for the Vintage Collection body. So if you want some freaky looking Cosmic Defenders or Enforcers, here you go. Like I said, I wanted to try and see if this gun fits in the leg holster. I went ahead and showed that off before I removed the armor from this Vintage Collection figure. It does indeed fit, but it does not fit very well. And this gun is actually already warped. It was warped in the package. I tried to straighten it back out, but it kind of made the plastic start turning white, so I stopped. But it does fit, so I might use this on the Vintage Collection figure with the Vintage Collection armor. One more thing before I put the armors on the proper figures. I wanted to show off the chests. As you can see, they're very, very different. Both furry, but in different ways. Chest size is different. This is more of a Revelation size, and this is the more modern, bulkier size. Somewhere in between the Revolution and the standard Vintage Collection chest. Here it is from the side view. As you can see, this side's more puffy, whereas these pecs are more flat. Back muscles are also different. So, there's that. So one thing that I noticed when I was trying to see if this leg piece would connect to this armor is this armor only has the disconnection back here, so this strap is in the way. The only way to make this connect is to do a little modification by cutting the bottom of this loop to where it can slide over the top. I'm going to actually do that real quick, even though it takes away a little bit of the value of the new Eternia figure. I mean, he's not that special anyway. So let me do that and then show you how that looks. Let's see if this camera will focus. Let's see, focus. Like I said before, I was going to cut this little piece to make it fit over the belt. I did so. It looks great. It's not necessarily destroyed, but it's not necessarily in the greatest condition now. But it looks really, really good. I went ahead and threw this 2000X weapon in the hand just to show you how that looks with Zodac. Looks okay. I think I will keep this leg piece, simply because it does fit this gun okay. I mean, it doesn't fit it great, like I said before, but it fits it. So if I don't want the gun in his hand, I will be displaying it right here. Moving on to the next comparison. For our next comparison, we have the vintage-inspired Origins Zodac with the necklace design. Anyway, here's how they look side by side. I'm not a fan of how this head sits on this figure. It looks like he has no neck at all. I don't like that at all, but here's how they look side by side. We will do a head swap. Armor swap is not necessary. This will not fit on the Masterverse body. The Masterverse one will be too big on the Origins body. Here we have the Origins head on the Masterverse body, and the Masterverse head on the Origins body. Here we have Zodac alongside some of my favorite heroes from the Masters of the Universe world, with my most favorite character, Cyclone, Mechanic being up there in my top 5, and then of course Zodac himself. All I need to complete my favorites are Stratos, whether it be Vintage Collection or New Eternia. I'm going to buy both. And then Roboto, New Eternia, or Revelation. I'm also going to buy both. So once I get those 2 characters from whichever line I decide to get them from, I will have completed my favorite heroes from Masters of the Universe. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Peace. Also, real quick before I start the video, I'm sorry about all of my stumbling through the video. I'm just a little bit nervous on the channel still. It's still a very, very young channel, so I apologize about that. I hope you guys enjoyed. Peace.